Love, Death, and Robots is a very hit or miss collection of animated science fiction shorts on Netflix. The shortest episode is When the Yogurt Took Over, in which scientists studying mutated bacteria accidentally make a yogurt culture intelligent enough to rule the Earth. In the end, the yogurt launches spaceships to spread its bacteria to the stars. Meanwhile, in our reality, scientists occasionally put bacteria on maps to see what it does. Let's talk about it. I don't think this is something scientists do, often, or take particularly seriously. I've just seen a few articles about people putting slime mold on maps with major cities marked with oats or whatever, and seeing what slime makes of it. Maybe single-celled organisms can plan a more efficient transit system than what we multicellular organisms can cook up ourselves. Like the yogurt says, humans are too close to their problems to solve them. Only eukaryotes can be impartial and objective. Like here, the culture looked a bit like the Japanese subway system, as if to say, "Nice one, Japan. Slime mold corroborates your infrastructure." In this case, the culture tells the US to make a train from LA to Denver, which sounds pretty cool, except there's a mountain range in the way. The bacteria is doing its best, but it's too far removed from the problem for its solution to apply to us. We'd need a map featuring something analogous to the Rockies for the bacteria's approach to be appropriate. You know what's definitely analogous to the Rockies? The Rockies. If we filled the Grand Canyon with yogurt and told the mold to go to Denver, we could just follow it. But alas, mold doesn't take orders from us, and would probably just curdle in Arizona. We're left with the reality that we are the slime mold designing our transit systems. And we're doing our best, sometimes even turning to yogurt for advice. But is that all humanity is? Just a eukaryote culture with arms and legs and stuff? Somehow, I'm hardly the first to suggest humanity speaks the language of the eukaryote. Michael Pollan usually writes books about cooking and botany and anthropology, so his book How to Change Your Mind about Psychedelics was a natural yet unexpected step. In it, Pollan writes about Paul Stamets, mushroom expert, who has, and I quote, a radically mycocentric cosmology. Stamets says funguses, especially psychedelic mushrooms, are inseparable from mankind's evolutionary past. Religious groups have long worshipped mushroom visions as gods or gifts from gods, and the act of worship makes those mushroom gods real enough to impact us. Says Pollan, consider all this from the mushroom's point of view. What might have started as a biochemical accident has turned into an ingenious strategy for enlarging the species' range and number by winning the fervent devotion of an animal. How diabolically brilliant! No wonder Paul Stamets is convinced of their intelligence. So, Love, Death, and Robots, scientists with too much free time, and people who have eaten psychedelic mushrooms all espouse the eukaryote as a source of information about the world from a perspective we could never understand otherwise. Says Pollan, especially in a time of ecological crisis, Stamets suggests, we can't afford to wait for evolution unfolding at its normal pace to put forth these solutions in time. It's a pretty attractive idea. We like to think we can get a jump on nature with insider tips from friends in high places. But maybe we shouldn't trust eukaryotes until we know their motivations. What's the yogurt's goal? Are we taking advantage of the yogurt, or is it taking advantage of us? What's it planning to do among the stars? Let me bring up another episode of Love, Death, and Robots. I really like this one. It's about an artist who makes murals covered with blue, a shade called Zima blue. The artist gets bored of that and starts putting blue everywhere, taking his art to its inspiration. The artist gets bored of that and decides to reveal and return to his origin. The artist used to be a swimming pool cleaning robot which developed sentience. Its first ever perception was the Zima blue tiling of the swimming pool, which becomes its last ever perception as it shrugs off its consciousness to become a mundane robot once more. So maybe the yogurt is having its blue period, so to speak. The bacterial culture is celebrating its sentience in every corner of the cosmos, and when it gets bored, it'll return. Not to Earth, but to being yogurt. Like the artist's final masterpiece, discarding cognition to settle back into raw perception, yogurt will just be yogurt again, understanding that that's all it ever really was anyway. Paul Stamets isn't waiting for the yogurt to come to this conclusion on its own. Says Stamets, mushrooms have taught me the interconnectedness of all life forms and the molecular matrix that we share. I no longer feel that I am in this envelope of a human life called Paul Stamets. I am part of this continuum of stardust. Says Paulin, Stamets sounded very much like the volunteers I met at Hopkins, who had had full-blown mystical experiences. People whose sense of themselves as individuals had been subsumed into a larger whole, which in Stamets' case had folded him into the web of nature, as its not-so-humble servant. Stamets gives Paulin a mushroom sombrero, showcasing the blurry boundary between mankind and the mushrooms which apparently give mankind a place in the universe. This is a peaceful acceptance of yogurt's coup. In Love, Death, and Robots, the yogurt takes over by exploiting competition between Earth's cultures, and by providing irresistible plans of action which are doomed to fail without the yogurt's help. The episode is pessimistic. Humanity's been conned by curdled dairy products. Even if we're better off ruled by yogurt, it humiliates us. The Zima Blue episode is optimistic about the same idea. The artist enthralls humanity, and the fact he turns out to be a pool-cleaning robot isn't embarrassing, it's beautiful. If something so simple can have meaning, maybe we've got a chance too. Or maybe I'm thinking about this too much. It's all I do here at Thinkster. After all, both the stories from Love, Death, and Robots are explicitly fictional, and I'm not so sold on Stamets' radically mycocentric cosmology that I'm lining up to buy a mushroom sombrero. But the point remains that there's no difference between a slime mold telling us to drill through the Rockies and our neurons looking at the Rockies and deciding not to. Whatever we are, we're the yogurt that took over the world. We can only hope our exit is as elegant as the artist's tribute to Zima Blue. If that sounds cool to you, subscribe. And maybe you'll like the new story I'm writing on ted-writes.com called Scumbug Scrambag. It's about an alien ooze called the Scumbug, who works as a hitman for an intergalactic crime family, but kidnaps a little human girl to protect her from the big cheese. It's sorta Leon the Professional meets The Little Prince, if that makes any sense. And I hope it doesn't. Bye-bye.